Have you ever had problems with miters that don't look perfect? I have, and it's really annoying. I'm on a hunt for the perfect miter, and this time I'm trying something that could potentially give me perfect miters without the hassle of setting up a saw. Yep, I've already done that thing, going just above 45 degrees on the table saw, and while that works, everyone doesn't have a reliable table saw, and sometimes even that won't work and you're scratching your hair in fury over the miter not looking good. Today I'll show you how I made this box using only this bit to cut the miters, and I've 3D printed a couple of things for this cabinet as well. And I've also bought 5,000 of something that is really overlooked, and I might even have come up with a new product to put in this cabinet. And at the end I'll tell you what I think about this method for miters. I bought this router bit for fun, forgot about it and then remembered I had it, tried it out and realized that it does work, but I'll show you how I set it up, and we'll make a wooden box to store something that I think everyone should have in their workshop. But before we get to the miters, let's go through the tough work. There are some things I think everyone should have in the workshop, and one of those things is something I use all the time, and it's very specific to Sweden, and it might be something you've never seen before, but I use it all the time. In fact, I have it in my work pants at all times. Not that. Come on. And it's this folding ruler. A folding ruler is not a replacement for the tape measure, it's a complement. They both have their place in my workshop. The folding ruler is stable, so I can take it up and flick it out very easily. I can hold it in one hand since it's firm. That also means it won't collapse, and you can also put the folding ruler on its side like this. I use mine all the time, but I also use a tape measure when it's the better choice. Another important part of any workshop is safety, and it's something I've overlooked for a long time, especially things that will help me if an accident happens. So I bought some stuff to help me if I have an injury, and I have something really cool I'll show later that I'm so happy with. But before I go there, I want to talk about things that you can't put a band-aid on but still need help with. When my father passed away too young a couple of years ago, I didn't accept that or the fact that I needed to talk to someone about it. I just kept working and found myself burnt out. And today, working as a full-time YouTuber, I don't have a lot of people I can talk to that can relate to my situation. And let's face it, everyone have their own issues to battle. So when I found BetterHelp, which is the sponsor of today's video, it changed the way I think about therapy, and it can help me navigate my thoughts by talking to a licensed therapist directly from home. And I know a lot of woodworkers are men, and at least for me it's always felt like I have to deal with my inner thoughts on my own. But I can tell you, you don't have to deal with it all by yourself. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist with years of experience helping people with struggles like yours, and who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. I have partnered with BetterHelp, and by visiting betterhelp.com/theswedishmaker or choose the Swedish Maker during sign-up, you can enjoy a special discount on your first month. Thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. When my material was milled and cut to size, I was ready for the miter. Now first, let's take a closer look at the bit. I have two of these. This one was around 20 bucks on Amazon. There are cheap options for this bit, however, if you've ever tried these Amazon yellow bits, you know that they differ in quality. So I also have this, which is much better in quality, but cost me 100 bucks. I would go for this if you can afford it, because it's much stronger and sharper. Another thing to look for on these bits is the size of material it can be used for. So this one is for 11 to 17 millimeter material. This bit is already angled to 45 degrees, so we don't need to bother with that. The thing we need to think about is how to set it up in the router. Well, the first step is to set the height. So what I learned was to lower the bit until it has the same height as the material. So that's what I did the first time, but that isn't really true since the material thickness will vary. So what the manufacturer of the bit points out is where the center of the bit is, and that's where you also want the center of your material. There are various center finding 3D prints online, but I made my own that fits a regular pen. That way it's easy finding and marking the center of your material without trying to measure. Once you have the height set of your bit, you can move on to the next step, which is to set up the fence. For the fence, I placed my material along the fence and placed a flat ruler next to it and made sure it just barely touches the bit. I want it to still feel like the wood will pass through but touch the edge of the bit. Once we've placed the fence, we don't want to move it, so if you want to do cuts in passes, you can add an extra piece of MDF to your fence, run the cut and then remove the MDF for the final pass. Before we do the cut though, we can check to make sure we have it set up by running an offcut through just a bit, then flip it over and do the other side. Now if we cut that part off and test the fit, we can see if both pieces are flush with each other. If they are, we're good to go. If they aren't, we need to adjust the height of the bit. If you hold your workpiece so that the angle comes down at the left, like seen here, and your left piece is too high, you want to raise your bit and vice versa. The first piece is run on its flat side against the fence. One thing to consider is the blowout at the end. I've intentionally kept my pieces wider than they need to be for the final project, which means I can just cut them down to the correct width later. When that part is cut, I'll just flip it over and do the other side as well, and then repeat for the next side of the cabinet. Then it's time to do the top and bottom of the cabinet, so we need to put that piece against the fence upright. So for that, I slapped a quick jig together. I have my plans on my website for free, but it's basically just a way to run your material vertically against the fence. And it also prevents tear out, and it's an easy build. Then I just repeat for all sides of the top and bottom, and then we can assemble the box. I will tell you what I think about the joint in the analysis at the end, but I can already say this. It is a lot of setup to get this right. This joint does another thing as well. When gluing up, we can just clamp it from the sides, because it pushes the material together like this. Now getting back to the things I think every workshop should have. On my last project I had an accident with the chisel. I'm not going to show any graphic photos of it, but it was quite bad. So this project is something I think everyone should have in their workshop, but certainly something that I have overlooked for a long time. I've had some band-aids lying around in the workshop, but that's basically it. It's not often that it happens, but when there's an accident, you need to be prepared. And for the accident I just had, I was preparing this video, so I just bought some steri strips and I was able to patch myself up quite good. Now if you hurt yourself, you should consult medical professionals, but in my case I was pretty certain I would be fine. So in my preparation for this project I realized something that I think might be one of the best ideas I've ever had. So, you know when you get a band-aid and it has that boring skin tone, and whenever you've worn it for a day or two it looks awful? So I thought I'm gonna buy black band-aids instead. But when searching for it, I only found very few options around, and they weren't cheap, so I did the only reasonable thing and ordered 5,000 black band-aids from a band-aid supplier. What are you doing with 5,000 band-aids then? Well, honestly, I thought about selling them, but since the regulations in Sweden and European Union are a bit too much to handle for me on my own right now, I can't really be bothered. But I have a lifetime supply of band-aids, and if I ever get through the hassle, I might be selling some. These were a bit too shiny for my taste, so I would have to order even more band-aids to get a really good band-aid if I want to sell them. Every workshop should have a medicine cabinet. I've added my black band-aids to mine. I also have a tourniquet, which I hope to never use, but this one is a one-handed version that might come in handy. And I also have some steri strips and other bits and pieces. The miters did turn out good. I'm very pleased with them, but the setup takes a lot longer than using the table saw. So I'm not totally sold on using this lock miter bit. What do you think? Could it be the best way to do miters? I think I will have to keep looking.